Hi, my name's Steve Usher, and welcome to the Experienced Designers Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Experienced Designers Podcast. So I have some very special episodes coming up certainly over the next 2 to 3 months. I had the absolute honour of being invited along to the Design Thinking Conference Through Different Eyes at the Tobacco Theatre in Amsterdam in October, where I commandeered a room and recorded live from the event with basically anybody who was willing to join me on the show. So we had a lot of fun, and thankfully I got to speak to lots of people from the event, some of which were attendees. I also had the opportunity to speak to some of the facilitators and some of those running the tracks, and also some of the speakers as well. So a really good kind of melee of insights and experiences of their work and of course, the event itself. And I just thought I'd also just take this opportunity to just share, I guess, a little bit more context or insight into the event itself or the conference. I've been to a few conferences in my time, and I have to say this was unlike anything I've ever been part of. I just felt so incredibly privileged to share 2 days with just such an amazing community of people. And secondly, just exploring the subject of empathy, which I think it's just something that the world needs more of anyway. Perhaps that's one for another podcast discussion. I don't know. But anyway, but I just thought the organisers were just really clever, just in the selection of speakers and the whole format. It was very, very different. And we listened to people from a range of professions and got to obviously network and meet people from different professions from all over the globe. But there was kind of this one red thread that just ran through everything and gave us something in common, which is around how empathy plays an important part of their work. So some of the stories that were shared were so impactful, and at times you could just feel the emotion in the room. It was like suddenly there was lots of energy, and then it just suddenly dropped, and it was just absolutely incredible to be part of it and witness it. But I think importantly, it really shifted our own perspectives and really got us to really challenge ourselves, really internalize and really think about this, both in terms of our work and I just think in terms of some cases in how we view the world. And I think, really begging the question is, what can we all do to bring empathy, or certainly our awareness of empathy, to a whole new level when designing services and products, of course, but I just think also more importantly in everyday life and the world. So a great mix of content and stories to share with you coming up over the next few months, and to give you a real sense of kind of what transpired over the 2 days and how that impacted everybody who was present. So it was very, very special. So I'm super excited to share more with you over the coming months. So as for this podcast, so up first, I thought I should start with one of the facilitators, and I got the opportunity to meet Adam St. John Lawrence. He's the co-author of a book called This is Service Design Doing. He's a partner at Workplay Experience Consultancy and co-initiator of the Global Service Jam, amongst other things. So Adam played the role of the difficultator at the event. So this is not something I've ever come across before, and Adam will elaborate further during the interview. But we also delve obviously into a lot more around what was discussed at the event and some of the impacts of that on him and myself, but also shares his views around where kind of is design thinking going, some interesting insights, or certainly design thinking or doing, and insights into the upcoming Global Service Jam as well. So thank you so much for listening, and enjoy this uncut version of our interview. So I'll leave that one there. Enjoy. Thank you very much.
Don't be silly. It's serious. Okay. It's serious.
Sorry, I'm actually going to keep this in as well. All right. Okay. So I'm here with Adam.
Yes.
Who I called John on the first day.
That's my middle name contains the word John, so it's quite a common error.
And that happened to me. My middle name is John as well. So there was, So I apologise
at birth.
I apologise for that. So Adam, tell the audience a little bit about yourself. And
well, my name's Adam. I'm a European. I live in Germany. Grew up in the UK. Lots of links all over Europe. And I work in helping organizations change the way that they work and how their people cooperate to create value. Some folks call what I do service design, design thinking, innovation, words like this. My background is theatre and developing products, physical products. And in this field, I'm known as perhaps one of the co-authors of a book called This is Service Design Doing, and as the co-initiator of the Global Service Jam, which is the world's biggest event which uses design thinking. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, I want to talk about that in a bit more detail.
Sure.
I also have the book as well.
Oh, thank you.
It's on my bookshelf. Yeah. So you had a role to play in the last couple of days. You've been involved in some of the facilitation. And
I've been the difficultator.
You were a great title.
Thank you. It's a great one. It comes from the work of Boal, who's an important theatre maker, and he is the foundation for some of the work that we do. In our work in design thinking, whether it's research activities, ideation, prototyping, implementation activities, we use lots of theatrical methods for that. So get up and try it. Get up and show me, Stop telling me about it, start making it happen, even in a very lo-fi way. And he has a concept in what is often called forum theatre of this facilitator whose task it is to sometimes make things more difficult for you. Because often when we're trying to be creative, we make it too easy for ourselves. We say the world will love this, will understand this, everyone's going to love my app, they're going to download it, they're going to keep using it. But how many apps do we have on our phones we never use or just use once? Yeah. So the role of the difficultator sometimes is to challenge the group and say, I don't think you're going to the difficult places. So my conference, that was my role, to be the voice of the audience, to say some of the stuff that was in the room that was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And perhaps help us actually go to some points that were not the easy places to be to discover what was lying there.
Yeah. I thought it was brilliant just because there were some difficult moments. If there wasn't an ability to voice that, then you don't know where that would have gone, really.
It's true. And I especially enjoyed, we try to keep it low tech because we're encouraging folks to keep their phones in their pockets or even in their buddies' pockets. So we use note passing, good old, primary school stuff, folding up a note and pass it down the line to Adam, and then people could anonymously express their needs. And it was challenging sometimes to reconcile those other people's, but we tried.
Absolutely. So what's day one? Yesterday.
Day one yesterday. So I've got to cast my back on this one. So every day we've had some, if you like, keynotes in plenary, and then we've had one or two breakout sessions. There's always been one large breakout session. I call it a break-in session because it was in the main room for about half the conference, and the rest of us were split out into breakouts. And unlike most conferences, we were allocated to our breakout sessions. We weren't allowed to choose. I suspect there was some sneaky mixing going on. But it's actually quite an interesting choice, I think, of the organizers, and I play a very small part in planning the conference. It's a good choice of the main team, I think, to encourage you to step into spaces you wouldn't normally step into. And we know what it's like. You're at a conference, there are sessions on, you go to the things which you see as being immediately useful to you, or the things that your friends are running. That's what we do, and we stay very much in our comfort zone. As a massively overused cliche, but it's a useful one. Yeah, and in this one, you ended up in spaces where you were really not sure why you were here, and that's often a very interesting place to be. At least for a couple of days a year, I think, to do that.
So even the facilitators were getting something out of it.
I think so, and we were also challenged. I did one small session, but everyone who was on the stage or running one of these breakouts was challenged to do something they've not done before.
Yeah.
Either the whole session was completely new or some aspect of it was completely new. So there were some opening nights here. There were some premieres of some content, some ways of doing things and so on. And so we were encouraged to grow as session leaders as well.
Yes.
Not just do our usual patter, the things done 100 times before, but try something new. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, it just you have to up your game, and rather than go into automatic mode. I've done this before. It's a new thing.
It's very focusing.
Yeah, I like
You're
it.
trying to think: is this working? Is this going the way I thought it would work?
Yeah.
I know that some folks did full rehearsal and so on. I didn't have a chance to that. I went in and just said, "Let's see if this works out the way I envision it," and it course, it never does, but you learn something when it doesn't.
Yeah.
So.
It was interesting actually, because I heard on a few occasions, those that running the tracks or etc., any feedback that I actually heard on quite a few occasions, thanks for the feedback on that. I'll take that. So that was useful. Really interesting.
And it's a great community for that. Everyone here, I felt, had a really positive attitude. It's a kind of a weird conference. It's an unusual conference. I think the tagline last year was, it's a conference for design thinkers, not a conference about design thinking. So there weren't project reports. There weren't, this is how you use a Post-it kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It was stuff which is at the edge of this world, or stuff where you're really challenged to find a link sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I think that searching, actually, that's saying, okay, that was a cool session. What has it got to do with my practice, with my life, with my profession, is a super interesting question to ask yourself.
So yesterday, was there any of the keynotes or any of the speakers or actors that really stood out for you?
Well, I was very pleased to see Anne Wilson on stage, because I recommended her.
Yeah.
And Anne is normally in the technical world, and she works with stuff that I don't understand around computers, providing services to people. But she talked about what's going on the internet and its impact on LGBT plus people, and some of the challenges within the internet around things like, for example, changing your gender, or things like having more than one identity in different contexts in your life. Yeah. And this is a great subject for this kind of conference, I think, because myself, as a cis man, I try and be empathic, but I have no idea of the detail of the struggle of some people. And this may be as Anne pointed out, a relatively small proportion of the users, but for them, it's a journey they go through again and again and again and again, while trying to be themselves. Yeah. So if we're talking about empathy, this is a fantastic place to think about that.
I just, the level of my awareness just went up so many levels. I was like, wow, I didn't even, because you just don't think, you just don't think, unless you educate yourself and you're in the know. But I even just the drop down, Mr. Miss, that I mentioned it earlier, but it's just that simple thing of that. That's and right. What that then creates for somebody,
and especially if you're non-binary, or especially if you're making a change, especially if you really don't think it's anybody else's business. And I think that's a very valid point of view as well to have.
Lots of work to do in that area.
I saw a lovely one last week. A colleague tweeted, which was you had to select your gender first, and it was the usual binary selection, and then you had to select your title. And I don't know this person. It was a tweet that they were tweeting, and they tried to. It was a woman, and she tried to select date doctor, and it said that title is not available for your gender. Oh yes, I mean really.
Wow.
So, I mean, that, of course, is pretty Stone Age. There are people who are doing much, much better than that, but it's still a long way to go.
Yeah, of course. I got that sense as well. Oh, yeah. And then today.
So today I'm really tired, so I'm not quite sure what everything that happened, but we had a kind of... Yes. It's very intense. It's very... I don't want this to sound like some kind of cult situation, but what you've got to hear is a bunch of very, very open and interested people sharing, and the theme is empathy. And that in the last talk today from Anne Stenros, she talked about empathy, but she also brought in things like compassion, things like hope, and what these mean to us and mean to the users, colleagues, whoever we work for, and not just as a tool, but also as a goal in the things that we create. And at times it did feel a bit like, oh my goodness me, I'm have I joined some kind of cult here? Is this some kind of therapy session? But I don't think it is. I don't think it's healthy to talk about these things and work on these things and divorce yourself from it. You can't. You do start thinking about your own hopes and your own where you need compassion or where you fail to give compassion. So yeah, it's been quite emotionally exhausting.
Yeah.
I think that may be a measure of value. I hope so.
Yeah. I think I did, after we spoke yesterday, actually, I walked back to my hotel, but I took a really long route back purposefully, because I thought yesterday was really emotional. I took a lot in from that. And I just had a bit of a moment walking through the streets, and I was looking at it was this spotlight from Stefan's, and I really had a very wide spotlight as I was walking through the street.
Yes.
And I was just really aware of every human being that I was walking past. And I was just really thinking about what's their story? What's their story? And it was just, I can't explain it. It's just this real moment that I had of just walking through the streets of Amsterdam.
And I'm sure if you're listening to this on the bus or at home or somewhere, that sounds really, really freaky.
Yeah, I wasn't smoking anything either.
But I think it's a superbly useful conference.
But it was from that. It was really thought-provoking around, it was very cool. So what next? Where is all this heading? Where are we going
with all this? Well, it's super interesting, isn't it? I mean, we're in a phase now where design thinking is a phrase which you can't escape. It's very, very mainstream. That's why I think it's interesting to have conferences like this one, which do look at the edges of it and not just the sort of the routine. We're in a situation where the world is changing very, very fast and getting faster. And even if we're going to just deal with that, never mind make it better, just keep up with it. We have to have ways of working which, on a very pragmatic level, are simply faster and lower risk. Because we have multiple ideas and we prototype many of them rather than having a vision and implementing some big thing which turns out to go wrong. But I don't think it hurts at all to also bring in a very human side to that and say this is about empathy, which is the theme of this conference this year and last year and next year, as far as I know. To say, is the stuff we're doing genuinely valuable to human beings? And that's not just a transactional question. That's not just a job they're trying to fulfill. It's about the core of people, and that is their emotions and their very human needs. So I think we're seeing right now a mainstreaming of service design, design thinking, whatever you want to call it. But that also gives an opportunity for specializations which are happening, specialization in certain industries, but also I think for a focus on getting better at the slippery stuff, getting better at the emotional side.
One of the things that was also mentioned on a few occasions actually was around implementation and actually getting this stuff in. And there was a few stories when I was speaking to some of the participants where they'd done that. They'd done some form of facilitation, some ideation, and then it just doesn't go anywhere. And they felt that there was a lot of frustration in that fact. So, but I think that's another piece which I think needs to be looked at and explored.
I think it's
further.
crucial. And I think there's a lot of, I don't want to put down anybody else's practice here, but there's a lot of people out there who really do confuse design thinking with an ideation, with thinking things up. I don't like the name design thinking for that reason. That's why our book is called Design Doing. But what you have is a very easy misconception. So it really, I say in a project like this, you're going to have four main things you're doing. You're going to have research, which some folks call empathy or discovery. You're going to have ideation after some kind of sense-making or analysis synthesis period. You're going to create ideas. You're going to build prototypes. You're going to implement. And I think those four things, research, ideation, prototyping, implementation, have to be part of every single cycle you do. Yeah, it's not a question of doing all this stuff and getting to the point of prototyping and then presenting that to an organization and saying this is what you do. That's the old agency model of graphic designers. Absolutely fine in its day and for that purpose. It's about incorporating the people who will be using and doing this stuff from the beginning as much as you can. So it's their project, not yours. And there are opportunities especially in research phases, in ideation type workshops, in prototyping, to bring in actually quite a lot of people. My colleagues at IDEO or IDEO and Lufthansa did a great project 4 or 5 years ago now. Barbara Franz told me about it, and it's in our book, where they prototyped their business class experience, which ended up with them building an airliner on the ground with working kitchens, working seats, the whole thing in Frankfurt, and flying 59 times to New York without leaving the ground. And that's a really great opportunity to prototype, but it's also an opportunity to bring in literally thousands of colleagues to sit in those seats and be part of this prototyping experience and come out of this not saying, oh, there's a new thing coming, but coming out of saying, oh, that's my new thing coming. When the project rolls out, they feel some degree of ownership of that.
Yeah.
And that's not just smart politics. It's a genuinely better solution.
Yeah.
Because nobody knows this world like the people who are delivering the services.
Yeah. So Adam, why is this not happening?
I think there is this misconception, which is, I mean, I heard someone today during a great speech, and it may have been a slip of the tongue, sort of equating design thinking with brainstorming, thinking it's some kind of creativity thing about getting ideas. And if you come along with ideas, they're not going to work. No. They're not going to be implemented. I mean, there's a wonderful guru around consulting called Edgar Schein, writing back in the 70s and the 80s. Business process consulting is his thing, and his books are very good for me when I need to sleep because they're really, really thick and lots of long words in them, and I'm not very good at absorbing stuff through reading. So, but if you read his books, what he's basically saying is, look, if it's not their idea, forget it.
Right.
Yeah. So go home. Just give up. So it's a question about facilitating or difficultating organizations through that change process. And I've been trying to follow the tweets from a parallel conference also happening this week. I couldn't be at both conferences, so my company split. Half of us went here, half of us went there.
What was the other conference?
Which is the Service Design Global Conference in Dublin. Which is happening right now. Yeah. I believe my friends are actually keynoting right now. And there was a great slide somebody photographed and put on the tweets, which said the tool of a service designer is the organization. Or worse, that effect. And this is very, very true. This is what you implement with. So if your tools are still pens and sticky notes, you're not getting it. Yeah. They are a mechanism by which you have to use the lever, the machine, the power, which is an organization, to actually make change happen collaboratively with the people in that organization. That needs to be part of your thinking and your doing from the start.
Yeah. It's a lot of work to do, though, isn't there?
Yes, it is. And one of the tricky parts here, I'm going to make myself, I'll make myself unpopular with some colleagues here. I teach at design schools and I teach at business schools. And I've got to be honest, it's much easier to teach the business guys enough design to be dangerous than it is to teach the design guys enough business to be dangerous. Because many, many people, young designers, and this is not their fault, you can't drink experience out of a bottle, they don't know how organizations function.
Yeah.
And if you understand that the organization is your tool, it means you don't know your tool. It's like trying to be a painter who doesn't understand how brushes work.
Yeah, because I understand that completely. Yeah, because each environment comes with its own different complexities and issues and moods, and each,
and every firm is different, every organization is different as well. So that's another reason to be collaborative.
Yeah,
and to respect the expertise of your co-creative partners from within the organization, because they do know their world.
Yeah, because there's lots of layering to that. Yeah, I totally get that. Interesting. So how can designers bridge that gap? The other way around.
Learn Six Sigma. Learn Agile.
Yeah.
And I'm not joking, actually. I mean, I don't understand Six Sigma, but I've been trying to get to grips with Agile for a while. It's absolutely brilliant. It's an amazing way to organize stuff. It's way, way more fascinating than I expected. It's not just for software development anymore. But, it's do whatever you can to speak the language of these organizations. Hang out with them. Speak their language, wear a suit, if you're going to be in an organization and they often love you to look different and be freaky. But what is the conversation you have with the freak or the clown compared with the conversation you have with someone who looks like you? Yeah. So in my organization, we try and dress like our clients. We try and use the same vocabulary that they use. So we'll call it design thinking or service design or whatever word they use. Yeah. And try and fit into their world as much as we can and keep your ears open.
Yeah, because also if you're trying to make a change internally, if you're the stakeholder and trying to influence internally, but you're coming back with a whole different terminology and feel and look about it, then it's even harder to pitch internally. And
it is.
To do.
Sometimes they like that. Sometimes they like the idea of something being new and different and off the wall.
Yeah.
But I think that's a rather short-term need. At some point you have to engage with all the cogs of that organization.
Amazing. So one parting gift can we give to the listeners? What gem of knowledge or something from the conference that we can give?
Well, it's very hard to express what happened to me personally at this conference explicitly, using words, verbalize that. Yeah. Because a lot of it is a bunch of implicit impressions, a bunch of memories, a bunch of insights perhaps that I can't put to words and perhaps never will be able to. Maybe that's an insight in itself, yeah? That not everything which is important can be written down on a Post-it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It can't be expressed in a PowerPoint deck.
Yeah.
Maybe it can be built in a prototype. Maybe it can be modeled in an experience or an exchange between people, because that gives it space to remain implicit.
Yeah.
So the idea that we need to be together in physical spaces and doing stuff is a very valuable one, I think. Yeah, it's not easy to do all this stuff through the usual, by email.
Yeah.
And I'd like to pitch an opportunity to do that, to be in spaces with people working in this way, which is coming up on the last weekend of March next year, and it's the Global Service Jam. It's this worldwide festival of messing about and trying things out and producing prototypes.
Yes.
It will happen in around 100 cities around the world on one weekend with a surprise theme that no one knows until they kick off their jam. And at the end of it, you made some prototypes. You also learn a bunch of new skills, new ways of thinking. Mm-hmm. You've met collaboration partners. You jam, like at the Irish Club, like at the Jazz Club. You don't do it to record an album. You do it because of the jam. That's the reason for it.
Yes.
If anyone's interested in that, just Google Global Service Jam, and you'll find it. Or go to a website called globaljams.org.
And I came across this last year, and I just missed it.
Oh, right.
And I don't think there was anyone from Sweden, or was there? I can't remember.
I think last year was a gap in our Swedish
There was.
There may have been one.
Yeah, I think there was. But I'm hoping maybe I could be involved in them.
You can always step up and do one yourself.
Absolutely.
All you need for a jam is a space and some connectivity.
Yeah.
So some jam hosts like to really go to town, and they organize food and they organize speakers, and they even produce, templates and stuff, branding. It's amazing. Other people just open their doors and say, right, chaps, here we are. What do we do?
Yeah.
And make the responsibility of organizing the jam. They give that to the jammers.
Yeah.
And there's many, many ways in between as well. So it's a thing which literally anyone can step up and do. It's a great way to establish design thinking, service design in your area. It's a great way to meet the people already doing it in your area. It's not a conference of talking, it's a weekend of doing. And I just think people will enjoy it.
And just to clarify, this is for anybody, regardless of it doesn't matter, any walk of life, any industry, any work.
You don't have to use design thinking approach. You don't have to use anything.
Yeah.
What we do is we connect you to a community of other hosts, and they will say, I need help, and someone pops up and gives you help, or they say, read this or try this, here's a link. But it can be complete beginners. There was one jam back in the early days, I think even in the first year of the jam, 2011, which is in the Gold Coast of Australia. I'm going to do a very, very bad Australian accent now, so please forgive me, Australian readers. But this is kind of a summary of a story which is actually more complex. But there's a bunch of guys on the Gold Coast who they decide to do a jam. They rent a beach hut to do it in, which is just fantastic, yeah? And I suspect there may have been a few stubbies in the cooler. But they sort of mailed me on like Friday afternoon their time and said like, hey, Adam, what's service design? And I said, Google it. And they said, okay, and off they went. And I don't know what they did for the weekend, but they did some great prototypes at the end of it. They I hope, learned something, and that's fine. If it's just a bunch of you around a table, give it a shot. Yeah. What can go wrong? The worst thing can happen is you get a fun weekend. Yeah. What's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with that. Expect to see the name Usher from Sweden at some point.
Fantastic. I look forward to that one very much.
So Adam, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for your time.
It's been great.
Take care. Thank you. And there you have it, another episode of the Experienced Designers podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening just as much as we enjoyed recording it. Thank you again to Adam, and also I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Anna and Tim from the Design Thinking Group just to say thank you so much for the invitation. I had an absolute blast over the 2 days. I'll be putting all of the links relating to the conference itself. Also, This is Service Design Doing book. Also, the Global Service Jam, and contacts to Adam as well if you wanted to get in contact with him directly. If you like what you hear, then please like, share, comment, print a t-shirt, do whatever's necessary to help us really amplify the Experienced Designers podcast and accelerate this movement that we're definitely on right now. We've now hit 13 different countries in terms of downloads. And we're really excited to increase the number of podcasts actually from next year to one every 2 weeks. And I've got some amazing guests already lined up from Berlin and also South Africa. So still a kind of global view, but bringing people to our community really to share their insights and their stories and learning. So I hope you enjoyed it so far. And I'd like to take this opportunity to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a fantastic New Year. And we look forward to sharing some great content and interviews in 2019. So until then, bye for now, and thank you ever so much.